Hello, my name is Bill Haley, and this is for Haley 2024, The Movement's Government Reform Ideas. Now, this video is going to be on supermajorities. So you have to understand, I am trying to create a proposed new constitution for the United States to bring us into more liberty, more freedom, smaller and limited government. But if you want bigger government, you can go to a competitive governance where you select the governance that you want that is bigger, more socialist, more statist, if you will. So let's go through the whole system, and we're going to show you how we move to a competitive governance, where if we have to go to a monopolized government, which one we'll call the sector board level, I'll show you those in a minute, then then you have to have a supermajority to get there, to have a monopolized type of government. So, or governance and regulations. So supermajority is going to be 70%. Instead of the normal 50% we have now to do laws, we want to go to a 70%. That's going to limit government greatly. We still get governed, but we get governed by our selected governing agencies. Let's go through the system a little bit. Okay, here's the system I'm proposing. First thing you have to understand is at this level right here, we have 30 different sector boards. I'll go over those 30 in a second. Education on one, military is on another, police is another, environmental controls, all the banking laws is a separate one, land and water is separate. We'll go over all 30. Underneath each one, we'll have competitive governance. Now, within your competitive governance here, we will have only the, you only need a 50%. You select your governing agency, your CRA, competitive regulatory agency. They govern, they regulate, and they send representatives up to the monopolized sector board level. Today we're talking about the monopolized sector board level and how they need a supermajority to take over any type of controls over the competitive governing agency that you select. Now, these CRAs that you select, they're full governments with legislative, executive, and judicial powers. So we have to understand that you pick the ones with like-minded people. So people who like Brookings Institute or the Democrat Party will pick those. People who like the Heritage Foundation or the Republican Party will pick those. People who like the Libertarian Party or smaller government can do those, and also the Green Party can do theirs. Obviously, I'm predicting around 12 different political parties, but they're not really political parties anymore because they're actually governing. They're competitive governing agencies where people who select them get governed by them and only by them. So if my neighbor picks a different competitive governing agency than I do, we are governed by a different governing body. He is governed by his, I'm governed by mine. So it's important to understand that. But there are a few things that we need at the monopolized government where it has to go across the board. And at that point, it needs a 70% majority to do that. That leaves most of the governance at the competitive governing agency. On the other side of the board over here, you'll see the rating agency and the rating system. That's to give high quality information from a wide variety of perspectives. And they also have something called a rating floor, where CRAs have to meet a certain standard. They don't have to meet it in a certain way, but they have to get above a rating. There's a lot of ways to get above that rating, and you'll see how that will reduce how much monopolized governance there has to be. When I say monopolized governments, I'm talking about within the locality or within the state, within the federal government. We still have the 3 levels of government. But you pick the one that you want to govern you, and your neighbor picks theirs. But the minor amount of things that has to go up. And the more you think about it, the less has to be at the monopolized. Especially if we have ratings and a rating floor that create a standard where people cannot be injuring people outside of their transactions, outside of their interactions. They cannot do negative externalities, is what I'm trying to get at. So let's keep on going. Here's a constitution. I'm going to have about 15 sections. We'll go over the 15 sections real quick. Sectors are different. That's a splitting government powers based off education, banking laws, insurance laws, stuff like that. We'll get to those. So in the Constitution, we're going to have a preamble. I did a video on that. I already did my video on citizenship. Everything's on my website. Everything's on YouTube. I'm getting it on Facebook. We're getting there. It is now April of 2021, and I did a lot of videos about a year ago, and then about 2 months ago, February or so, I started a whole new set of videos really going into the Constitution, which I really refined over the last year or so. So, Section 1 is citizenship. Section 2 is general laws. Section 3 is bylaws. I'm not going to get into all those right now. I have videos on that. I have a full overview, a short one like 7 or 8 minutes. I have a 30-minute and like over an hour overviews. Then each one of these has a whole video. But you can just read the whole Constitution on my website, about 13,000 words. So we have it out there. Federal, state, and local, we still have that. By the way, every current government will have a full CRA structure. At the local level, it will be a local CRA structure. The state will be a state CRA structure, and the federal will be a federal CRA structure. Same constitution for the federal and the state, and actually the locality has the same constitution. Anyway, original authority, it goes into who has the authority at what level of government, and also at what level of the CRA structure. The CRA, which is the bulk of the authority, the sector board, and when does a parent sector board have authority. The supermajority is this video, and we're going to talk about the supermajority. The parent sector board, what that does is more of a constitutional body. A CRA sector board is specifically for that sector's authority only when it needs to be monopolized, and then just to keep the CRAs within the structure, to be a governing body, not to govern, not to regulate, but to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Competitive regulatory agencies is the base of this reform. I just finished a video on that. I put it out there, mid-April now, and that's the base of this. Everything is surrounding that. That's why the supermajority is when it has to go to monopolize. It really has to when 70% representatives of 70% of the people say it should go up there, because this is too important, and we're not getting rid of the negative externalities with the rating system and the rating floors, which is going to get rid of 95% of the negative externalities. But in those rare instances, we're going to have to go up to the supermajority. The rating system, taxation, the rating system, I'm going to do about 3 or 4 videos on that. Videos out there already from last year. A whole write-up on my website about all these issues. Taxation, we still need to fund these things, guys. Just because I go free market everything. Free market military, free market courts, police, schools, roads, education. All the land gets sold off. That's public land to private sources or publicly traded corporations. I got that into my Constitution as well. We still need to collect money. We still need a military. We still need police. We still need to fund the prisons. We still need to do the things we need to do. There's some things we can get rid of, and it's going to happen. Or we can do a lot more productively. But taxation, we'll discuss that. We'll do a video on that soon. Debt, we have massive debt. We have to have a mechanism. If we're going to change our Constitution, we're going to go into the free enterprise, everything. We have to account for the debts, the liabilities, which are the debts, and then the assets, which we have a lot of assets out there. A lot of the assets are going to pay off the debts. Pockets of freedom is foreign policy and immigration reform. We'll look at that. We'll have videos on that. But again, everything's on the video. Everything's on the website. States partial acceptance per sector. We'll get into that when we do that video. Separation of responsibilities and authorities. Okay, let's go through the 30 sectors real quick. We get rid of government welfare altogether. We go to a mandated that you have to give roughly 5% of your income to the charity system, and the charities will take care of the poor. There's a full system. I'll do a full video on that. Foreign protection system, we split those powers up into 5 sectors. So the top commander-in-chief is different from the top diplomat, different from the top people doing the money. So we have the money coming in on Sector 9, the military capability system, doing it in a free enterprise way. We're going to do military authorization agency. That's a societal oversight role. We do a separate one for the military and foreign policy versus I have a law enforcement one that does anybody with inherent government power has to get approval from the military, from the law enforcement authorization, which is going to be on this side. So we go free enterprise police, free enterprise courts, free enterprise prisons with a lot of high standards. They cannot just infringe on civil liberties. I have a lot of standards to inhibit and prevent that. So, but the law enforcement authorization, anybody with inherent government power has to get approval by 90% of the people. It's part of the supermajority is what I'm talking about. Here are the 5 more sectors. You can read them on the screen. 5 more there. You can read those on the screen. And the last 5 right there to make up the 30 sectors. If you don't see them in the sectors, they're going to fall into one of these. And we can go over any issue that you're concerned about, but it will fall into one of those. So if you don't see it. So this video is going to be on supermajority and why, what we're doing. How is it structured? Because all this Constitution is structural in nature. It does not get into the nitty-gritty of regulations. There's a little bit of that for the transition because we do transition, and transition is a huge part of switching from this current system to the new system. And we have to have a transition. All representative action at the sector board level or parent sector board level must achieve a 70% representative vote. That's not the CRA level, guys. That is only at the sector board level. Parent sector board level as well. But parent sector board cannot regulate anyway. There's a very few responsibilities it has, and it has to stay within its boundaries. But the sector board, representative control, to go up there and them to have control, they have to achieve a 70%. There's some other stuff. I'll get into that other stuff in the clauses in a few minutes here. So, all representative action at the sector board level or the parent sector board level must achieve a 70% representative vote, except for precise clauses narrowly tailored in this amendment using the word must. Now, 99% of that is structural in nature. You have to have an executive, you have to have a legislative branch, you have to have a judicial branch, they have to do certain things for the structure of those branches. Most of that is not saying what it can regulate or what it can do into the world of that sector. And we'll go over a few of those, but a little bit, but not much, only to stop negative externalities. That's what the sector board's about. Stopping negative externalities. Stopping when somebody's liberty is going and they're using their liberty to go too far, and that's infringing on somebody else's liberties. So how do we stop that? To give people the most amount of liberty, we all have to restrict our liberty because, hey, 2 people cannot be in the same physical place at the same time. So if one person is there, the other person doesn't have liberty to go inside and occupy the same space. And I know that's a little silly, but on the same thing, you have the liberty to play music. But do you have the liberty to play music super loud? You have the liberty to do a lot of things, but you cannot be putting people in danger. We'll get into some of this. And this is the base of governance and how we live in society together to give each of us equal rights and equality among men, and to have the most amount of liberty. And this is structured to try to do that. And the reason we do 70% is because we have to allow and tolerate somebody else's liberty to such a degree so we can have that same liberty. But at some point it becomes too far. And we're infringing on too many people's liberty. Our ability to play music or have our car engine so incredibly loud that it's just disturbs the peace. When does it stop? Right now, 50% vote in city council, state legislative bodies, federal legislative bodies I don't think 50% is the proper level. I want to go up to 70%. And believe me, the rating system is going to solve some of that problem as well. Representative action at the sector board level or parent sector board level can be repealed by a 40% representative vote. This does not apply to constitutional clauses. I read it over and I thought I had a little loophole where somebody can take away a constitutional clause, so I just put this in there. Obviously, the Constitution, I have a amendment process where you need 75% of the representatives of 75% of the people to amend the Constitution. So let's keep on going. An action by a sector board or parent sector board represents a vote on a leader. We need executive leaders, we need legislative leaders, we need leaders. It's a tax. There are a few sectors that will create a tax. CRAs are going to implement most of the CRA fees, which can be taxed. Some of them are going to be proportional based off sales, based off of real estate value, based off of income levels. So let's keep on going. Fees, authorizations. So these are the representative action by the sector board. Regulations, laws, and other activities properly, narrowly tailored, and expressly authorized to the sector board or the parent sector board by this amendment. So it's highly important. While I give them the ability to vote on these things, they only have that. They don't have a general grant of power. I make it very specific. They have a narrowly tailored, expressly authorized to the sector board or the parent sector board. So every time I give the sector board, which is a monopolized governance, monopolized regulation across everybody within the jurisdiction, local, state, or federal, then we really narrow it down only to solve the negative externality. Everything else has to be done by the CRA. There is no general or broad grant of authority at the sector board or parent sector board levels. I just have to say it. Even though the whole system does not allow it. We do not want people doing with our current U.S. Constitution what I don't want them doing to the new one what they did with the current one. They're not allowed. The U.S. Constitution never gave a general grant of power. I'm not going to get into that, but the Commerce Clause and stuff like that, that's not a general grant of power. You cannot regulate across state lines. That's not what that meant. And by evidence of that, they didn't do it for the first 120 years. Let's keep on going. Mandatory sector board action must use a following multi-step voting system if a 70% vote is not obtainable. So, there are a few things in the Constitution that says the sector board must do. Create a leader and a couple other things. We'll get into those. Now, if you cannot get a 70%, it still needs to happen. So I did a multi-step voting system. So if this amendment requires a specific action by the sector board or the parent sector board represented by the word must, so I very specifically put the word must in there relating to sector boards in this amendment, and a 70% representative vote cannot be attained to accomplish the action, all relevant representatives must submit proposals. Now, all relevant representatives are going to be within that sector's jurisdiction in the legislative branch. Now, which legislative branch or which sector has that authority? The parent sector board ultimately has that authority to say that. Because there will be gray lines, but the parent sector board defines that. I always try to create a representative body that can give an answer to gray areas. So the court system just does not do it. Now, some of that I do give to the court system, but it's still a representative body, the way I created it. So definitions are very well either defined, or I give a representative body the ability to define it. And I don't allow it to be defined just any old way. It really takes like a 70% vote to expand what government power is. So I really tried to put the language in there to limit what they can do. That's why the Constitution is like 13,000 words. Okay, the top five. So all the representatives must submit proposals. So we're going to get 5 different plans with the most amount of approval. Um, so we can create a system. Who has the most approval. So all the representatives propose a solution, a leader, a proposal for something. We'll get over what the proposals will be, um, can be, but then all the representatives filter out everything but the top 5. Then there's 4 sets of votes. Every vote, the first 3 votes are to eliminate one of the proposals. So we start with 5, you eliminate 1, you have 4. The representatives all vote again to remove 1 more. We're down to 3. Representatives vote to remove 1 more. We're down to 2. Then it flips to when there's only 2. They vote on the one they want, the leader they want, or the proposal they want. And then 40% still can eliminate that law, but then we go into a new set of proposals. Now there's going to be rules within the bylaws so that does not become burdensome. So somebody cannot just play games and always just getting rid of the law and nothing else changed. But we'll get into that. And I don't necessarily have to get into it because the bylaws will get into that. We'll stop some of that. I'm doing the structural in nature. Representatives will do some of this. But they're locked into a system that creates a way that we stop the corruption and we still have representative action. But most of what we see here is not what they can regulate, but that they have to have a leader. And I'll get you the other things that they can do. We'll go over some of those. There will be 3 series of representative votes to eliminate one of the remaining proposals. The positive vote of the remaining 2 proposals creates law or elects the top executive leader. Now again, only very specific areas where they're authorized to do this. No general grant of power once again. And a repeal of any action required by this amendment with the word must will prompt a new multi-step vote that must conclude within 30 days. A repeal with less than a 50% vote has a 30-day delay. So this is a little bit of structure. So let's say you have a commander-in-chief, they can only get a 55% approval. Well, it only takes 40% to kick that leader out. They can still be kicked out, but at some point they're going to have to stop and say, this leader has the most support. We're going to keep that leader unless something significant happens, which means, let's say, representatives that did vote for that leader pulls their support back. So a change of a certain percentage or something like that can be written in the bylaws so it does not become a burden. When we have a commander-in-chief at war, we don't want it switched around at will too easily. But we do want a way to switch it around if that commander-in-chief does not do a good job or starts becoming abusive. A lot of ways for that guy to get kicked out, by the way. The accountability body, the military authorization agency, they can kick somebody out with a 40% and just take away their authority. Then that sector needs to elect a new leader. So there's ways to do it. There's ways for people not to become a dictator and the whole 9 yards. A lot better than the current system, by the way. Because that was the clauses within the supermajority. Very short, but very sweet thing. Other applicable clauses within this. Let's see what this is. Okay, it's important to understand normally the way the sector board gets authority. A CRA sector board must govern through its CRAs except for precise areas where it's impractical or creates a negative externality. A 70% vote of the respective rating system is required to move governance from CRAs to the sector board. So even if the monopolized governance at the sector board level can govern or regulate, it has to be governed through the CRAs. That's going to stop a lot of problems right there. That's going to stop just a lot of problems. So let's go. A 70% vote of the respected rating system is required to move governance from a CRA to the sector board. So it's not going to be done easily. CRAs are going to hold that power. It's going to take 70% of the rating systems to say we should have power at the CRA sector board level because we just cannot take care of the negative externality. It's not working through the rating system. 70% of the respective sector board judicial branch must certify that the rating floors are on CRA cooperation fail to adequately address the negative externality. So they have to try cooperation among the CRAs first. The rating system has to show that. It has to show that the rating floors did not work. It has to show that a lot of things failed. And we just cannot do it any other way than to have the monopolized governance over the entire thing. At that point, we're talking 1 or 2%. We're really talking some people, a small group of people really want to pollute or really are not stopped by the rating floors or something else to do this. It's just too burdensome. And we have to have a one-size system over the whole jurisdiction. I think it's very, very minor. This is a safety clause. The rating floors are going to take care of most of it. Shoot, the rating system with ratings and informing the population is going to solve most of it. Rating floors are just a check on that, and then this is a secondary check. So when we have competitive governing agencies, they govern. They're going to take care of most of the stuff, and they're going to act responsible. But in the rare instance where they stop being responsible and they start causing problems outside of their transaction, they're harming other people's civil liberties, other people's rights, they're endangering people and the like, we have a few steps that they can take to stop that. Every voting threshold listed in this amendment uses properly weighted representatives. I'm not going to get into that now. Go look at the sector board level, sector board videos, and I explain how we do properly weighted. Most of it is citizens have equal representation at the sector board level. It's the CRAs. But businesses also do have some representation there because they're actually paying the bill. People are actually doing business with them. The better businesses are going to do more business, and they're going to have better ratings, and they're going to have some representation. So when you actually do business with a business out there that's doing well, you're going to give them more representation because they're actually paying taxes, they're paying fees, they're paying for law enforcement, they're paying for prisons, they're paying for the military, they're paying for a lot of stuff. They're being governed. These are individuals. These are people. These are citizens that own a business. And they have the right to be representative in that business, not just as a citizen, but in the business. And if you're going to be paying a lot of money into it, you're going to get a little bit of representation out of it. So that's part of the properly weighted issue there. And I'll do a whole nother video on properly weighted. I haven't done that yet. It's probably going to be down in a few months, but I want to get there. A rating system with a 70% vote may authorize precise, nearly tailored, and strictly defined areas of regulations to the sector's CRA sector board. I was just talking about that. So a rating system has to agree that they cannot take care of the negative externality. It needs to monopolize things. It needs a 70% vote. 70% representatives of 70% of the people is the best way to always to define it. Representatives of 70% of the people, because this is a rating system is a representative body where everybody is represented by this rating agency that they select. When you select it, you are represented through there. Now you pick you're allowed to vote within your rating agencies, within your members, to send representatives up to the rating system. So you are really represented. Let's keep on going. The DFP, this is the diplomats. The head Secretary of State or whatever. There's nobody over top of him. He's a top elected guy. Anyway, but we also have a legislative branch there as well. So the DFP Sector Board must establish broad rules of military engagement regarding military forces outside of American borders. Detailed rules of military engagement must be set by Sector 7, which is the Commander-in-Chief. Now, what I'm trying to get here is most of the system is set up to have the supermajority needing for almost everything, but this is a must. So they have to have a military engagement. That is a negative externality if they don't have it. A societal negative externality. We have to have rules of engagement. So if they cannot reach a 70% majority to get a good rules of engagement, then we're in trouble. So they must do it. So there's going to be a few things like this where the sector board has to do something. It's a negative externality if they can't do it. So we can't just put it 70%. So then minor or rules of engagement for the military are set by Sector 7. So that's more of shoot, don't shoot, where the rules of engagement for the DFP is more of don't put that aircraft carrier in the Mediterranean or something like that. It's more of the big things. But where that line is, they'll figure it out. The DFP sector diplomats board must set immigration law. So that is something that has to happen. We don't have a choice on that. They have to do it. Without immigration law, we have major negative externality. And we're a citizen ownership model of government, which means that's ownership rights. When somebody walks in and they just become a citizen, they're taking away our ownership rights. Look at my citizenship section, and I talk about who can and who not be a citizen. A person born to a U.S. citizen automatically becomes a citizen, has the right to. That's within the laws. But somebody in China, India, Middle East, wherever, they don't have the authority just to come here and become a citizen. We'll look at that video for that. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But what I'm trying to get to is for supermajority, this one doesn't need it. We want it, but it doesn't need it. It just has to be above that 50% threshold going through that system, multi-step voting system. The Commander-in-Chief, executive leader, the president, who's in charge of the commanders of the military, must and has unhampered authority to protect Americans, property, and real estate on American soil from non-American threats. It doesn't need a 70% vote. The executive has authority. Within the Constitution I'm proposing, they have to. I have the word must, so he must do this. If a foreign foe comes over and attacks individuals, property, real estate by Americans, and if it's outside of America, we have rules of engagement. The DFP has to make those rules of engagement and give the Commander-in-Chief broad authority, or authority in a certain way to do or not do, to attack, how to protect, and if they don't give that protection, they shouldn't be doing it. And that's part of the 70%. By the way, diplomats cannot put some base overseas unless they have a 70% majority. Now, they're already there. When we switch over the transition, a 40% can close down a base from overseas. Hopefully, we're moving all our bases to the pockets of freedom. If you haven't seen that video, go look at that reform for for immigration and foreign policy. But our military is going to protect the pockets of freedom. Okay, so the supermajority is not work on the Commander-in-Chief having to protect people on American citizens on American soil. He has that authority, unhampered authority to do that. Now, if he starts abusing that, 40% of the people from a couple different boards, actually, from a couple different sectors, can throw him out. So he's not going to abuse it. Or if he does, he could be thrown out. Every sector board must develop a process regarding an arrest through the end of trial that respects civil liberties within this amendment or properly passed civil liberty rating floors. So we have private sector courts, private sector law enforcement, private sector prisons. But the sector board must develop a process to make sure civil liberties are protected. Now, since it's a civil liberty, only 30%, or representatives of 30% of the people, can increase the standards on better civil liberties, on what the police cannot do, what the courts cannot do or must do to protect your civil liberties. So it's a very strong, even though it's free enterprise, it's very strong on what their authorities can be, what their limitations are. So if somebody did a crime, it was witnessed by a lot of people, you have plenty of evidence, they go through the process, they're respecting somebody's civil liberties, and they can convict them, put them in prison. All that can be done within the system, and it's not. You don't need a 70% vote to do that. So what I'm trying to do with some of these clauses is, what does a sector board have to do that they can go through this multi-step voting system when they can't achieve the 70%? So the law enforcement sector board must set conditions in which and to what extent the law enforcement sector board's elected leaders are authorized to command law enforcement CRAs. This is the police chief. He will have certain authority at the sector board level, the executive of the law enforcement for the locality or the state or the federal government. They're going to and will have a division of powers for the federal, for the state, and the local, just like they do now to a large degree. But we're going to have it probably better, because free enterprise always makes it better. So the law enforcement sector board, when do they have the authority to come in and tell the CRA, the law enforcement people underneath them, all the private law enforcement businesses, what to do? Well, only in emergency situations, a big flood, riots, and the like. When things are getting too far out of control, the law enforcement sector board must set conditions in which the law enforcement sector board's executive leader, which is like the police chief or the sheriff, are authorized to command law enforcement. When you get your badge, part of getting the badge is learning all the conditions when you have to start taking directions directly from that police chief. Otherwise, you're taking directions from your CRA or your police business. That is regulated by your law enforcement CRA. Normal 95% of all days and all activity are going to be within your CRA. And there's going to be mandated rating floors on cooperations between the law enforcement businesses. They're going to have to work together. You have to protect everybody within danger up to a certain point until their law enforcement personnel that they hired, whoever got injured, whoever got robbed, whoever got abused or assaulted, their law enforcement is going to have to start coming in and taking over. There's a lot to get into on that. I just went down a rabbit trail I probably should not have gone down. But the 70% is not needed for that. They have to set conditions on when a sector board executive leader, the police chief, comes in and starts directing. And I got a few percentages down there to make sure it's not that much. It takes a 30% rating system may lower the sector board's command authority. So it takes 70% really to get there anyway, because a rating system can lower. We don't want a lot there, only when it's significantly necessary. The Judicial Authority Sector Board must create a system of judicial warrants that respect civil liberties properly passed as civil liberty rating floors. It is a natural negative externality to have a private law enforcement start infringing somebody's civil liberties. So we must have a system done by the representative body to do judicial warrants. So we set that up. Every sector board must set rules regarding a dispute or injury that occurs outside a contract or transaction. However, the default jurisdiction is the injured party's Sector 25 CRA. So the sector board must set these rules up. And they don't have to go to a 70%. So what I'm trying to do is there are some clauses that are we know there's a natural negative externality. So we very narrowly tailor the must in this to go to that multi-step voting system to bring it down to a 50%, where they have to have a set of rules. We need a uniform set of rules on some of these things. And believe me, cooperation is going to handle most of it. When I say cooperation, cooperation between law enforcement businesses, court businesses, prosecutors who need to get the badge of authority through the law enforcement authorization, everybody. Okay, let's go to another one. This is banking. They have a free enterprise banking system. A federal level sector board's financial banking CRA sector board must create the paper and coin currency fully backed up by proportionally with state level CRA currencies named the back dollar. So this is just part of, you need to know my whole monetary system. We go with roughly 600 different currencies within America. Anybody can own any of the currencies, one standard. This creates the one standard. That way everybody can quote the BD is the unit of money now. We're not going to use dollars anymore. We're going to use BDs. We're switching it around. It stands for backed dollars, which means it's backed up by things of real value. Not pegged to something that has real value, but it is backed up with those things of real value. When you trade, currency with somebody else to buy something, you are actually trading something that you own, something physical. Well, it doesn't have to be physical, but something that people is designated to have real value, and you're swapping that over to somebody else. Go look at that. I'll do a video on that, but it's all out there on my monetary system. Every state level sector's 24 sector board must collect 5% of their state's GDP to fund their federal level sector 9. So there are taxes. This is to fund the this is using the sales tax to fund the, and maybe some income tax too. But it's a state level sector 24 sector board, and they work through their CRAs. Don't get me wrong. The state CRAs are going to collect taxes for their members, but they have to do it, and they cannot do fraud, and there's ways to stop them from doing fraud. They have to have standards. They have to show their work in the whole 9 yards. But that's to fund the federal level sector 9. That's to pay for the foreign protection system. The military mostly being that. And you can look at that set of sectors there. The transportation would go free enterprise roads, and there's transportation sector board. So they must. So if they can't get 70%, they go to the multi-level voting system. But they must create a standard anonymous transponder payment system. But they don't control the prices. Everybody gets to put their prices in. We'll discuss that on that video and how we go free enterprise. Okay, here's 30 sectors again, and I'm not going to go talk about all these sectors again, but you'll see where there's only, I think, 6 sectors where the sector board has primary authority. The 2 definitely are the military authorization and the law enforcement authorization. Anybody with inherent government power, any judge, anybody that has inherent government power must get approved by representative 70% of the people. That's so important to understand. And that is primary authority at the sector board level. They don't have to get, part of them have to get 70%, but there are a lot of things they can do just within working together. We'll get into that in another video. I'm not going to go deep into that, but we went over a lot of the issues. I picked out probably 7, maybe 8 of the major issues that don't need that 70% because it has to be done. We already know it's a negative externality, and for it not to be done is a societal negative externality. So let's go over the we got to 15 there. We go back to, okay, this is a CRE. This is where 90% of the action happens. Almost 100% of the governance happens here. The 10% of the regulations that happened up here at the monopolized sector board level, right here, is the it still has to be governed through the CRA. They just have to say to the CRA, okay, you have to do this, this, and this, and they have to implement it. They have to execute it. They have to build that into their legislative body, build it into their laws, and execute it. And then use their judicial branch to do the court system and the like, following their regulations on the things that have to be moved up there. And the parent sector board is given very little authority, and there are a few musts in there, but there are a few issues where it does not say must. It gives them an option, and when it gives them an option by using the word may, it goes to the 70%. So if my constitution, within this constitution, if it uses the word may, 70%. Uses the word must, it all it has to do is go through that multi-step voting system, which can be 50% plus 1. So please consider a donation to this Haley 2024 movement. I'm trying to do a lot of this on my own, and it's a lot of work. I'd love to have a social media person and the like. Try to get rid of my full-time job I currently have in sales and move fully towards this, because this is a profoundly new system that can take us to the next level of liberty and standard of living in this country and in the world. So until the next video.